Welcome. This is Jordan with Foodbevy, the online community for food and beverage founders. And today I'm talking with Lauren from Mizuba. And Lauren, would love for you to just start right from the beginning in terms of tell us a little bit about yourself, the company, and how you got started.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lauren from Mizuba Tea Company, as Jordan just said. I personally work with a 100-year-old family matcha green tea manufacturing in Uji, Japan. Mizuba started on accident. I actually never ever meant to be in the food space, the wellness space, and as I never meant to be an entrepreneur at all, actually. My dad's a doctor. I went to college studying journalism, publishing. My thesis was like in Charles Dickens. So, but I had been studying specialty tea for now about 16 years. So my whole life studied tea just as a total super nerd, took online classes. My family was really into food. My mom actually was friends with Julia Child back in the day. So food was always around me, and I kind of found my niche and love for specialty food through tea, and as a super passionate hobbyist at that point, I guess. But 2013, I went to Japan for the first time just to visit a friend who is doing missions there after Fukushima, but also teaching English. And he was like, come visit. And I was like, yes. And I knew there'd be good tea in Japan, but I had just had no idea how good the tea was. And so there was like three main catalysts that kind of allowed Mizuba to start. The first one being is, as a foodie, I like anywhere I travel, the first place I go to is the grocery store. I mean, I could be in Paris and like, the Louvre and whatever, but I'm going to go to the grocery store first. Okay. So there's so much possibility, and especially in a place like Japan when you have no idea what's on the shelf, and it's just so much fun. So of course, loving tea as much as I do, I always go straight to the tea section. And what I realized was that the cheapest tea on the lowest shelf of the grocery store was 20 times better than anything I'd ever had in America, that I worked 3 jobs in high school to like pay overseas shipping for. So that told me initially that high quality tea was accessible in that country, and more accessible in their culture. And I was like, man, like why don't I have that back home? Full transparency, I was a senior in college on that trip. So I was like thinking about my life and what I wanted to see in my life. And it was high quality, accessible tea, So that was number one. The second catalyst was, if you've been to Japan, and we kind of experience this in our culture a little bit with like coffee and wine, but just tea is so integrated into their culture as hospitality, as whenever you meet people, you're served tea. And loving tea as much as I do, like, this is how I want to live my life. And I had lived that out on my own a little bit. Like through college, I'd always make tea for people. My mom would make me a cup of Constant Comment by Bigelow every morning in middle school, and I was like, a thing with my mom. So I just fell in love with the ease of which that was available, and the element of hospitality I really experienced in Japan on my first trip. And I was like, man, I want to see that back home, And then the third and final thing was basically a gift from God, because I randomly got connected with a matcha farmer on that trip on accident. So, in that moment, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to start a business at all. No. Like I said, it was my spring break of my senior year of college. So I was just thrilled to meet a real life hero of a tea producer, and I went home. Everyone around me, my parents, my friends, they're like, you need to do something with this for your life. And I was like, no, I need to go to grad school. I'm going to work for Chronicle Books in San Francisco. I'm going to be a book nerd, and they're like, no, like, you need to do something. And so it was actually my dad and my best friend from college, who was a business major, that incorporated Mizuba, and they're like, "You're doing this now."
They give you a choice.
Yeah, and now it's been 7 years, so it's been a huge blessing. And I will say, being an accidental entrepreneur has helped me a lot, because if I knew what I was getting into, I don't know. But
Well, so totally understand that. I mean, you've been doing this for 7 years now, so you're like double the time period of like the expected startups failure. So tell me about some of the challenges that you've experienced along the way in building the company into what it is now.
yeah, I would say, of course, the first year was a complete learning curve, 90-degree learning curve. And what's fascinating now, my perspective is probably different from a lot of you guys, just because this is now all I know. Like, I went from college straight to working this job of mine, and so I don't really have an outside perspective of coming from a different industry, or what is it like to be in a corporate culture or whatnot. So fortunately, I grew up in a small town in California, Santa Barbara, California, and I now live in Portland, Oregon. And a lot of that small, I don't want to say anti-corporate, but just like unconventional job structure is very common. And so there's a lot of community around that. And no matter what challenges I face, like, I do feel I've been super blessed to have a lot of people to reach out to. And I feel like that really happened when I moved to Portland, is when I started Mizuba in Santa Barbara, and we still have a HQ there. But so we were based in both Portland and Santa Barbara, but like more so in Portland, there's just this community. And I never met so many young women my age that also have their own food business. But back to the challenges. I think just learning as you go is a huge challenge. I'm the kind of person that wants to be prepared for things. And so there's a lot about owning a food business and entrepreneurship, that you're faced with something, you're like, okay, I just have to figure it out, and you can't over stress about it, like, it's really easy to kind of spiral out of control and be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? This is crazy. But at the end of the day, you just have to remember, like, you will figure it out. It will be okay. But more tangibly, importing, we're an importer, wholesaler, and retailer. So, when I first received my first shipment of matcha, I was like, oh, I just received matcha and I sell it to people, because that's all I knew, right? But no, you got to learn the complexities of being an import business, as well as a wholesale business, as well as a retail business. So all the facets of that, I think also just having grace with myself. And you see a lot of other companies, and it seems like they're doing stuff very, very quickly. They're like, oh, wow, that campaign just came out. Wow, that's wild. Things take time. And I think one of the challenges that was more internal for me was like, how do I have grace with myself and have a realistic vision of how much time it takes to do things well?
I think that's incredibly key because we often use other companies as a measuring stick and look at headlines of companies that like grow very, very quickly, or companies that sell for millions of dollars or raise millions of dollars. It's so easy to kind of compare ourselves to them without really understanding the situation, the backstory, and all maybe the years of hard work that might have came before that that aren't part of that story. So I know you've dealt with a couple of ups and downs through various economies over the course of your business. How, if any, has COVID affected your business with especially importing product from another continent?
It has certainly affected us, but in a weird way, of like some good ways and some negative ways. And actually, I feel like those cancel each other out, because it's like, it's just how people now approach our business and how we've pivoted, so to speak, and what's stabilizing. There's been curves and waves in our own business, but as a tangible example of that, we have 400 wholesale accounts, the majority of which are coffee shops. My husband worked in coffee for 8 years. My family owns 4 coffee shops in Portland. I'm like half coffee industry, basically.
So you're the rebel with tea.
I am the black sheep of the family a little bit, but side note, my husband now owns his own tea company as well. So,
Nice.
but so you can imagine when COVID hit and all these coffee shops unfortunately have to close, our wholesale just slowed down. I can't say it completely stopped, which is, I'm super thankful for that. A lot of our shops maybe have drive-throughs, or they adapted really quickly with pickup and whatnot. But on the other hand, our online exploded. So it was almost an overnight shift of the majority of our revenue being from our wholesale reach to our online e-commerce just skyrocketing, which we're super thankful for. But our heart and soul are like relationships and people, and like we love our coffee shop so much. So it was like, on one hand, processing everything with everyone while also celebrating, but also just like, wow, being wide-eyed about the whole people love online shopping when they're stuck at home, like. And I would say, if we hadn't had a very solid foundation of a website before this, I think it'd be much more of a challenge. So I guess at the end of the day, watching COVID in our business, we're just very wide-eyed about what's happening. I do thankfully feel like, as far as our industry goes, things are stabilizing a little bit more, and coffee shops are figuring out how to open safely, and things are kind of coming back a little bit, so it's evening out again. But who knows what the rest of the year is going to have. So yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, what do you expect based on what you've seen and what you've heard for like the next 6 to 12 months? How are you changing your strategic plan for your business at all?
Oh, I was gonna say, I expect maybe a giant meteor, but as far as our business goes, yeah, wouldn't that be nice? No, I'm just kidding. As far as our business goes, I expect to continue. We've always done this, but I expect to continue to lean in on how to support our customers at home. And like I said, our mission with Mizuba is to make high quality matcha as accessible as possible. Well, I mean, our number one is to preserve the heritage of Japanese green tea, but also make that accessible. And that it, like, being at home making tea and having a moment to yourself is right up our alley. So we've always supported our customers trying to make matcha traditionally themselves, but I feel now more and more people have time to do that. So just being creative and how we can best support our customers.
Have you seen an increase in some of like the matcha like tools and the whisks and
Oh,
things like
we
that?
straight up sold out of gift sets overnight.
Wow.
Yeah, sold out really fast. And then, like you mentioned before, I guess another challenge was Japan kind of stopped flights out of the country. So pivoting from just our shipping was a big stress point for me, but it's all worked out.
What'd you have to do for shipping?
Oh, well, so prior we just had to change methods, because like
Okay.
there's like a kind of national shipping in Japan that most of my farmers use. We work with 8 small family farms in Japan. And
Okay.
also, I will say, had I not had those personal relationships, it would be a lot harder. But our farmers are like my family friends. A lot of them have met my parents, so it's like they're more, I think, willing to work with us on the ground and be like, oh, what can we do together? So just figuring out different brokerage services that is affordable for them, but also can get the product to us, And when you're managing that many farms, everybody's going to be a little bit different. So that was a big challenge we had to work through.
Definitely understand that. And then if you were to give a piece of advice to someone starting or running a food and beverage business based on your experience, what would you tell them?
Ooh, drink a lot of tea. No, this is gonna sound really simplistic, but I think it's the number one thing that has really helped me. And just pick up the phone, be a phone person, call people. And a lot of people want to rely on email. I get text messages. I think that's a little weird. I'm 29, transparency, and I'm like the oldest millennial on the planet. I don't do Google Calendar, like, and so many people want to text me things, but I'm like, I feel most of my work gets done the fastest over the phone, because if you pick up the phone, somebody has to give you an answer right away, instead of like this whole back and forth on email all the time. And I'm not like, don't get me wrong, I do email and all this stuff, of course, but I just feel in terms of time, energy, and effort, you're most likely to get things done faster if you call people.
It's an incredible point, and I feel like especially with people starting online businesses or e-commerce, they tend to shift all of their efforts into that digital communication. And actually talking to someone over the phone or talking to someone face to face over Zoom now, it can help things move a whole lot faster, as you
Yeah.
were just saying, and be
Yeah.
way more effective.
And I mean, my company literally in 100% is built on relationship. And I just feel people appreciate the willingness to cultivate relationship, whether it's like a tangible thing or not. Like, I think it's subconscious most of the time, but like, I feel people remember you more if they have interacted with you on a more human level instead of like just an email chain. And I've had that feedback over the years, be like, oh, you were the only one that like called, or like, oh, I remember you because I know what your voice sounds like, So yeah, that it's simple, but it's my piece of advice.
Lauren with Mizuba Tea, thanks so much for being on today.
Yeah, thank you. Can't wait to have a matcha moment with you guys. Cheers.
Perfect, love it.